Okay, so this is a disaster of my own making. This is what you're looking at. It's a tabletop. It has these really cool tapered legs. Unfortunately, it is a leaf table, but unfortunately, the lady I bought it from lost the leaves. But it is solid maple, and it's about an inch thick this way, and that's about 3/4 of an inch. It is an incredibly solid. You can see the batten that they added here. That is about an inch and a quarter thick. It has this chamfered edge, so it has this very modern edge style. But what happened was I left this side down in my basement on a carpet, which I thought would protect it for an extended period of time. Well, I debated about maybe making my own leaves. And when I had to move it, I realized that it was just like green and fuzzy and had gotten wet. It was just damp on the basement floor. And so there's some staining and so on. And so the only way these joints are going to get filled is if I put Quickwood in there. That's the way I'm going to deal with it. You wouldn't want to use Timbermate because it's water based and it would soften up if the finish ever broke, and then your table would sort of start to dissolve. So the more permanent fix is to use Quickwood, and I have the pine version of it. So it's a little bit lighter and yellower than the standard or natural Quickwood. And so I actually think it's going to be pretty close to what I need. So I'm going to show you how I cut this up and mix it. This is $7.99 for this guy for a 1 ounce. The black walnut and the pine are more expensive than the natural. It's a you also get a much larger tube, so it's, I don't know, like $4 or $5 more, and so you get a tube that's way longer. Like it's about that much longer, maybe. So, anyways, if you're doing a lot of filler and you're painting it, then the natural is the way to go. So, anyways, I'm going to mix them up, and then I just have to jam it into these gaps and seal that up, and then hope that the color is pretty close to what's happening on the rest of the table here. Okay, so here's what we have. It's the pine. It's pretty close. Put on my spectacles. And so what you want to do is you take off the little silver cap here. And then I just cut right through the plastic. So you can always cut more and mix it up, but it's kind of pricey and you don't want to waste what you have. Let me go get that. All right, so that's what it looks like inside. There's your activator, is the white stuff, I think, and then it's the pigment or color on the outside. So we'll see. I like to cap it to keep oxygen from getting in there for what it's worth. So you peel off your plastic. You don't want that stuck in your workpiece. And then you just start to kind of mush it together. Um, do it the way that works best for you. I'm gonna use my old arthritic thumbs here. And then I gotta kind of work on my strategy here. Don't have a lot of gel stains that are in this range, so you always want to put something on that's a little bit lighter than what you're working on, and then you can tone it. I think I just noticed a rock in here. You do want to go in there and do what you can to clear it out. So I'm just going to take a little chunk. This color is not going to be a little bit of color that's off is not going to bother me as long as it's a small crack like that. And then here's where I'm just going to kind of cut it off with the putty knife, and then I'm actually going to reapply it. I missed a little spot there, so I'm going to shove some in. I'll take the little lump off my finger, pack that in. The more you can do to avoid having to sand and chisel and stuff like that, it's time that's back in your day. So I'm gonna grab something real quick here. Okay, so these are way too dark, I think, but I feel like we need to put in just a drop of brown of the Mixol here. I'm just going to put a little bit of pigment into it. And even if it's kind of streaky, that'll actually be okay because it's going to show up more like wood grain. So you can actually put pigments into Quickwood. I'm lucky to have a guy that does a lot of high-end restoration and conservation in my area. And he told me that if you take the pigment out of the bottom of a gel stain, as long as a can's been sitting around for a while, you take that pigment, you can, that might have been a little too much. You can put that into the Quickwood, and that will help colorize, or kind of help you color match your project. And then I actually saw a video that he appeared in doing a, it wasn't a Quickwood related video, but it was furniture repair. Well, actually it was about Quickwood. He did a, was fixing a chip on a table. And so he was doing what I'm doing right now. He showed the audience that what he does is he uses a little bit of water. Take some water, and then that will help you kind of smear the Quickwood. It will reduce the friction. It'll help you flatten out Quickwood you're working with. So I'm going to get into the glob and just pack that. So, I mean, I'd like to know more about the chemistry and the science of Quickwood. It'd be interesting to sit down with one of their experts, but you can do some pretty incredible stuff with it. Just, you know, it's epoxy Play-Doh, so you're kind of only limited by your imagination. All right, I feel it's already starting to firm up, so I got to throw it into these joints before it turns into a rock. Too much talking and not enough working. I've got some solidity problems. Let's see if I can jam it into the biggest gaps. Well, I can still move it. Yeah, I might have to go back to the drawing board. Looks like those are going to be boulders for Dungeons and Dragons quests. All right, so that's how fast it starts firming up. And it's going to depend on the temperature. The warmer it is, if you're working in kind of a hotter climate, let's say you're out there in the Texas sun, some heat and humidity down in Louisiana, you're going to have to use less and work more. I'll have to just fix up some fresh stuff for the pieces, the gaps over here. This one I'm going to have to cut off with a chisel, I think. But I'm just going to work fast. And so it's kind of like, it's got the consistency of chewed gum. Where'd my mix all go? I think the color is going to be good with this stuff. So I'm going to work some more pigment into it. Not too brown, but I think it has potential. So it's like making a tiny loaf of bread is what it kind of feels like if you do any baking. So that's nice and pliable. So anyways, this is, rather than talking, blah, 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 you want to get it packed in there. And you always want to stay keep a little extra beyond the surface. So if you need to sand it or cut it back, your gap is filled and you don't have to try to stick filler on filler. You just got to get extra and you just have to shove it into place. Not a lot of artistry. It's like making a pizza. Throw all the cheese on it you can handle, and then throw another handful on top when you're done. This kind of fell apart, this one plug here. It started to firm up too fast, as you saw. But I think it'll work. As long as it stays in the void I'm trying to fill. And the cracks go all the way through, so I'm working on the back. I'm going to make sure I pound some in here. Get some water, and I'm going to mash that into position. Same thing here. Just have a little applesauce cup or something. Yeah, I think it's applesauce cup. So I just get a little water on there. Carve off the excess and reapply it. Redistribute it. Get everything level. Look, I'm just going to shove some Quickwood instead of Timbermate. That's the thing that's with Quickwood. I put off these Quickwood projects because if I'm going to use Quickwood, I want to make sure I use up all the extra. It's kind of pricey. And I don't do a ton of these repairs. There. And so I tend to do Quickwood repairs in batches, and so that's why this table kind of got left behind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my flat-bladed chisel. I'm going to shave that back if I can cut it at all. Same thing with this booger over here. I'm going to sand the whole top and take it out and finish it now that I've got weather that's close to warm enough to doing oil-based poly outside. So the other half of this table is over here. It has some staining, which is worse, but the joints actually held together better. So I'm going to go get myself something to eat. I'm going to let that percolate over here, and then I'm going to come back and smooth it out. Okay, when it comes to cleaning off your putty knife and the Timbermate, you want to get it scraped off as quick as possible, because it's not like Timbermate where you can just take it into the bath, shower, or sink and rinse it off. This stuff will set up as hard as a rock, and then your surface, your putty knife, will be a little rougher and stickier for it. So Don't delay. All right. Hope this helps. Okay, I just want to show you this. It's really only been about 10 minutes since I set this aside, but I can barely get a knife to scratch this stuff. So this was the extra from here. And so if you need to make a repair in about half an hour where you're sanding, then Quickwood is indeed quick. And I want to mention that people might say, "Hey, why don't you smooth this one out?" Or this one's pretty flat, but this is probably the better example. Is why wouldn't you try harder to get that smoothed out and flat? What happens is that having the water, it can help, but if you're trying to I'm trying to do multiple repairs here. If you're short on time with Quickwood, you don't want it to kind of, the last thing, have it be, you're trying to level it, and that like the last little bit where you're trying to flatten it out, it might stick to your blade and the whole patch might pull loose. And then at that point, it's too cured. It's too set up to actually put that material back in, and then you just have to cut more and add it, and it doesn't work very well because this got so hard over here so fast, which is a good thing, but I find that it's better to, if I'm not doing a ton of Quickwood repairs, to just put on a little extra, and if it's close to being set up, I just leave the extra. It's fine. It's a little bit more sanding and cutting, but it's not worth yanking out the whole plug by accident. Okay, so that is there now, and we need to trim it back. So I'm going to try to use a chisel, although the problem is, well, it's not really the problem with the chisel. You can sand this. What you're going to run into is that the Quickwood is just probably going to be a lot harder than the wood. And so if you try to sand just that, you're going to end up kind of destroying, you're going to gouge out these areas around it. And that's going to be a problem. I mean, depending on where the repair is, what it's doing, in a large area, it might be subtle enough to where a regular human eyeball isn't going to notice it unless someone is looking for the repair. But if you use a chisel, you can kind of set it up to match the surface of what you're working on. And so I'm using the bevel here, there's the flat part and then there's the angle, and I'm using the angle. And I'm kind of doing what's called a skew cut. I'm kind of sliding from side to side, a little bit of an angle. I'm trying to shave it down to where I can use the wood, the surrounding wood, to actually support the chisel for the cut. So that wasn't the best application of Quickwood. It had hardened up a little bit by the time I applied it, but it did the bulk of what needed to happen. So now there's just a few tiny pieces. Just a few small gaps. And then it'll be a little easier going over the top because I can kind of go straight at it, and I can use the flat part of the angle in the back to support the chisel. I'm going to swing over to here. I know it's very pretty. I did not fill it enough. Right there, it's going to be really close. I'm not continuing that edge very well, so I dropped the ball on that one. So right here, it's not quite. Let me trim it. Let's see how close I am. Pretty close if I round that edge just a hair. So there's just a little bit of a gap right at the very end. So, I mean, there's probably going to be, some evidence of a repair. There's going to be a glue line because it has some funky glue lines. But there's kind of a lot going on for a maple table. There's a lot of structure in the grain itself. So here is where I actually want to use maybe a scraper and peel that back a little bit. I'm not going to scrape the back because you can't see what's happening. But this one I did this one I managed to get the Quickwood on when it was still very pliable. It's a much nicer repair. And so it's a lot easier. You can see what I was saying maybe earlier in the video, if it's part of this video, but when I was applying this, I was saying how the cleaner you can keep your repair, the simpler, the less material, the faster it's going to be to tidy up the leftover Quickwood. Come in this way and shave that top just to see. At this point, what I'm trying to do is just figure out where the wood starts and stops and where my repair starts and stops. And I don't know, I'm going to do some videos about chisel sharpening and kind of how to spend money on sharpening things. But this is actually a garbage chisel. I was at a store, working at a store, and a guy walked in, and he was a professional tradesman. He was a contractor, I think a doors and windows guy. And we said, hey, your chisels are so beat up, you may not want to have them sharpened. It was a service we offered. You may just want to get some new chisels if you do it for a living. And he said, okay. And he's like, you guys want these chisels? And I said, well, I'll take them and I'll put them to work. I always need extra stunt chisels. And so I was able to flatten out the back, and I ground it down, and it's not the straightest edge. So we'll be, it does help me make a skew cut more easily. But I have better chisel sharpening tools and jigs now. I'm cutting the wood. caught a piece of the wood out of the grain. Whoops, did it again. That's where I was saying I probably want to go with a scraper for that, but I'm going to put gobs of finish on it to pretty it up. All right, I'll turn this around. Well, hold on a second. Okay, so I still have this, I keep the package for some reason. Mini glue scraper. It's a carbide blade from Woodcraft. It's the kind of funky looking green handled thing. So it has this carbide blade on the end. Guy right there. So it's pretty darn sharp and it's really hard. And so it does a really nice job of shaving back Quickwood. That's what you want. And what I'll do is I'll probably take some poly and then I'll paint on a little bit of pigment. See if you enjoyed that. Let's see if we can do another one real quick. This one's pretty chunky over here. Back out. And this wasn't the best repair over here, but that's not going to take long to clean up this. So yeah, might as well do the last one, which is right there. So I need to actually gouge that back a little bit, otherwise I'm not going to be able to. I kind of caught the end of the grain and it ripped. So if I smear a little Quickwood here, and then there's a pocket over here, if I just put a pinch in there, it's going to be ready for some finish about the time it takes to move it outside. So let me do that in a second, but first I'm going to turn this around and do the other side real quick. Okay, so I don't know. It's kind of weird. I kind of hold off on doing Quickwood repairs until I absolutely have to. And then I try to cluster them so I can get them all done at the same time once I'm set up for it. And so now I'm feeling like I have the tools. I kind of have an idea of how the Quickwood, whether it's going to need some pigment for the color matching, and I've got a feel for how it's going to work. And so this repair over here wasn't even close. I don't know, I could probably just put about a dime in there. So that was a terrible effort on my part. But this will go relatively quick. There's a flat angle here. I can take the chisel and I can use the flat side to hold it down with these fingers over here. And then I can kind of work the corner of the chisel into the cut. And as you can see, it's a fast, clean cut. That looks pretty good. Going the other way, I'm going to have to fill that. So yeah, I'm definitely going to have to bust out more Quickwood, but in terms of having an exit strategy and how to get this piece of furniture sanded down after getting it filled and taken outside for some poly and being able to get it a new home, I'm much more optimistic about it than I was this morning when I got up. So I wasn't even planning on working on this today, but it's a project that really needs to go. So anyways, so I got to fill this in and maybe just smear just a few little baby fills on this side, on the other side, and then I just have to sand down some of this busted finish. You can see where there's some damage here, so I'm just going to scrape that with a backhoe, I think, and do some quick sanding, and then put some plugs in here and be done with it, or at least till I finish it. I missed a spot. There's some voids there. I even made a chicken with the leftover stuff. Because I thought I had no place else to put it. Turns out I did. Although my chicken looks more like a penguin, so